Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Discriminating Gamer. You know, I once went back in time to warn everybody that the Titanic was about to sink, but they just threw me out of the theater. Ladies and gentlemen, today we're going to go ahead and take a look at my top 10 Eastern Front World War II games. All right, ladies and gentlemen, so we're going to go ahead and take a look at my top 10 Eastern Front World War II games. Now, here is the dealio. I want you to understand right off the bat, not all of these are war games. Many of them are not. Many of them are other games just with the World War II theme. There are several war games in here. There's some hex and counter war games and some other kinds of war games, but they're not all war games. So if you're just here saying, I want to see what great war games there are, and I'm going to call Cody an idiot because he doesn't like the war games I like, you don't need to comment. You don't need to. Please feel free to comment, but be polite. I would really appreciate that. All right, let's jump into it. So before I begin, I have a couple of honorable mentions. I'll tell you right now, these are extremely light games. First of all, we have from Draco Ideas, Scope Stalingrad. This essentially is a memorization game. It's a game where you place cards out. You're trying to take shots by revealing opposing players' cards. You can kind of move your snipers around in different locations among the cards. Very easy game to learn, very easy game to play, and yet there's some real strategy there. Really enjoyed that one quite a bit. Second one is a book war game from Worthington Games. This is On to Moscow. Essentially, you're the Germans making the drive toward Moscow. You're fighting battles, but at the same time as you're moving on Moscow and you're ticking off boxes and what have you, you also have to worry about other theaters, North Africa, et cetera, the bombing campaign. It does a really good job in providing this kind of light World War II experience in book form. Great little solitaire book game. All right, now let's go ahead and take a look at the actual list here. Number 10. Number 10 is a game that I played about, I don't know, a year and a half, 2 years ago. And I'll tell you this right now. It's technically a two-player game. I've never played it with another person. I've only played this one with me playing both sides of it. But it's a really good game. This is my number 10, Absolute War from GMT Games. Absolute War is a great game of a grand strategic Eastern Front game where you are attempting to, one side or the other is attempting to either invade the Soviet Union or be repelled from it. And I think there are some scenarios you can play, different scenarios you can play. It's been a while. But one thing that's cool that I really like here is you've got this kind of weird cards, I say weird card, interesting card system, where you've got like pips that represent kind of advantages you can have in battle there. I really like that. I really like the card play in the game. I thought that was pretty cool. But overall, it's just a great Eastern Front scenario, broad Eastern Front scenario game. It won't be the last one on this list, but I really enjoyed it quite a bit. So that is Absolute War. That is number 10. That is from GMT Games. My number 9 is another big, grand Eastern Front game. You've got, of course, the Barbarossa scenario where you go in there, but there's other scenarios you can get. And this is a game that's had several editions. In fact, this is the 5th edition. This is the Russian Campaign 5th edition from GMT Games. This is a hex and counter game, and it is really, really good. Now, here is the dealio. Once again, let me qualify this. I have not played it against a living, breathing person. Just the corpse I keep in the closet. No. This is another one that I've played both sides on. And what's cool about this is more than Absolute War, I think it really lends itself to that. This is one where you can actually really game out a game from both sides and really feel comfortable doing that. This is great, especially that Barbarossa campaign, because it's like the Germans make such headway at the beginning, but they've got so far to go. And it's like almost right off the bat, the Russians are just spent. But gradually they get more men coming in and they get more units coming in. And the Germans, for all their strength, it begins to dissipate. The more they move, it begins to dissipate. And the more sieges they have to undertake, and the more battles they undertake, their power is getting less and less. So I really like that quite a bit. This is probably my go-to Eastern Front, grand Eastern Front game here. So that is number 9. That is the Russian Campaign 5th edition from GMT Games. And my number 8, again, this is probably going to make some people mad because this one has a supernatural element. I will tell you right now, this is the only game in the list that has a supernatural element to it or any kind of fantastical element to it. But this is Escape from Stalingrad Z. Now, essentially, Escape from Stalingrad Z, this is not a war game. This is a zombie game. Essentially, you kind of get a group of Russian and German survivors who are trying to get out of Stalingrad as these zombies are overwhelming them. But this has kind of got a flip book, and you can make decisions. You can go escape into one room or escape into another, and it will tell you to flip to a certain page. So it's kind of a choose your own adventure aspect here. But it's a pretty good just zombie survival game, but the theme is so awesome. Their artwork is outstanding. It's really fun. It surprised me how much I enjoyed this. It's a solitaire game. Really, I appreciated how much I didn't appreciate how much I was going to really enjoy this game. But Escape from Stalingrad Z got a horror element to it, got a supernatural horror element. But if you want a good Eastern Front, a fun game set in the Eastern Front, this is a great one. So that is Escape from Stalingrad Z, and that is from Raybox. My number 7 is a really good game. Not a war game. In fact, this is kind of a Euro game in a war game disguise here. But this is 1941 Race to Moscow from Phalanx Games. Now, originally, they had done the Race to the Rhine game, and then they came out with this one, and then they did the reprint of Race to the Rhine. But this is a great game, Eastern Front game, where you've got the 3 German army groups. The 3 players are taking on the roles of the German army groups. Army Group North, Army Group Center, Army Group South. And you've each got objectives, like I think it's Leningrad, Moscow, and it's not Kiev. I can't remember the third one. But you're trying to move toward those objectives. And the game is not about the battles, it's about supply. This is a game of logistics, which is why I really appreciate it. Because you have a lot of war games, but while logistics and supply is an important part of it, it's not really the crux of it. It's not emphasized. I was actually just in my World War II class the other day, I was telling my students about like when Eisenhower was approaching the Rhine, just the tremendous amount of resources and ammunition they were expending every day. It boggles your mind how much the Western Allies were doing that. And so it's so cool to see a game address the logistics issue of this war. So it's really well done. And again, as you're advancing, you're drawing cards, and if you've got the resources, you defeat that card, you can move forward. But it's how do you get them up there? How do you get them? And here you've got trains that have got to move forward and try to get the resources to the places where your units are so that they can stock themselves with it so they can fight the next battles. It's really well done. Now, I will say, I did get the Race to the Rhine, and I do think Race to the Rhine, the new edition of Race to the Rhine, is actually the superior game. And maybe I'm biased just because I've written a lot about these generals, Bradley and Montgomery and Patton and what have you, and I'm just fascinated by that. But I think it's just maybe a better game too, this new edition of it. That having been said, Race to Moscow is outstanding, and it's a great Eastern Front game. So that is 1941 Race to Moscow from Phalanx Games. That is my number 7. My number 6 is also from Phalanx Games. This is Iron, Blood, Snow, and Mud. Iron, Blood, Snow, and Mud is a comparatively light war game that takes place on the Eastern Front. Essentially, you've got tokens of German units that are advancing, tanks and infantry, and then you've got the Soviets who will also build their own tanks and infantry. Now, again, Soviets start out pretty light, but the Germans are pretty strong. They're going to make a lot of headway, but as the game progresses, increasingly the Soviets are going to get more and more powerful. And initially, the first few rounds, the Germans have the initiative, they have the advantage, and then that's going to flip to the Soviets. There's like special tokens that you can get that give you certain advantages over the course of the game. But it's got a pretty decent combat system, a dice combat system. I love how the Soviets can produce like partisans that can cut off lines of supply for the Germans, and the German units can become eliminated if they can't trace supply lines back to their bases. So it's really a good game. I really like it. You got Stalin is there in Moscow. You can try to capture Stalin. Really a lot of fun. Great 2-player Eastern Front game. That is Iron, Blood, Snow, and Mud. That is from Phalanx, and that is my number 6. My number 5 is a hex and counter game on the Eastern Front, and this is Assault Red Horizon 41. Again, this is a great, it's a great hex and counter game. You've got the the thing with the tanks where they're pointed at the vertices, which is kind of usual. I don't know that I played a game where some of the units had to do that, others it didn't matter. But it's a good, solid game. Of course, it's kind of tactical. You've got different engagements here and there. Tactical, where again, you've got things like opportunity fire. You've got smoke and stuff like that. But you're moving your units around in such a way. You're maneuvering them in such a way to eliminate your enemies, to achieve your objectives. It's a solid game. What I like is you've got these cards that tell you kind of the all the stats for your units. And what's interesting here too is like the game begins and the Soviets have all these like really old units. Even the Germans have these older units, right? That they've had around for a while. So we're not talking about like the big Tiger tanks and stuff that you think of when you think of the Eastern Front. They've got relatively lighter units that really were in play in 1941. And they did a phenomenal job of kind of translating those units into kind of playable units on the board, those real tanks and groups and what have you, weapons groups into these units on the board. Really a phenomenal job here. I know they came out with Sicily fairly recently. I haven't played that one, but I'd like to here at some point in the future. But that is number 5, Assault Red Horizon 41, and that is from Assault Games. It's another hex and counter war game. It's a bit of a cheat because when we think of the Eastern Front, we're thinking of the Germans versus the Russians. Here, however, this is a game about the Soviet invasion of Finland. This is Freezing Inferno from Princeps Games. Freezing Inferno is really, again, a game that I thought I'd probably like it. I didn't think I'd like it as much as I do because it is smart. You've got these kind of setup cards, and you can kind of pick them randomly, so you have these kind of random setups for the units there. But essentially, you've got the Soviets crashing into Finland and trying to take advantages, and they're trying to get past their main points. And there will be opportunities, particularly up north, for the Soviets to kind of get through them and start crashing through. And you're trying to get, I think there's 3 spots on the board the Soviets are trying to capture in the scenario. But it's really fun. It's really well done. Air power, you can send them out, you can attack them. I really like how you've got like the commanders. You got the HQs, and you got to keep your HQs within relatively close to your front lines, and they can be taken out. And the HQs are, if they are taken out, there's severe penalties for the units there. Really, really good. I really had a lot of fun with this game. I played this with Ray, and it's cool because you got an economy and you're buying more units, and there's a lot of bells and whistles and optional rules here that you can use. I really like the combat system with the dice, how it works. This is just a great package, and it's a lot of fun. Great Soviet Finnish War theme here. They do that really well, but just operationally, really well done. So that is my number 4. That is Freezing Inferno, and that is from Princeps Games. My number 3 is a game that from one of my favorite designers, David Thompson, and he's done this Valiant Defense series in which there are a lot of great battles. They take place over certain battles, and this one is the Battle of Stalingrad. This is Pavlov's house. This was the first of the Valiant Defense series. And we actually, when I was teaching in Wyoming, it was great. We had David come out, and he actually gave a presentation on this game. Super good guy. Really, just you couldn't ask for a nicer guy, and really brilliant, great designer. This game is great because you've got kind of the 3 sections of the board. You have kind of this operational phase where you see the German units coming at you. You've got this board where you're trying to kind of repair your communications lines. You're trying to send ammo and food and stuff across the river. And then you've got kind of the tactical battle where you're moving individual men throughout the house who are firing on them. And it was pretty cool because he's talking in the presentation. He said, the myth was it was just these, I don't know, dozen or 2 dozen or so men holding this house from the Germans. And that was the myth. The reality was there was an entire logistical support system in place to keep them fighting in that house. And that's really what he wanted to detail in this game. And he did a spectacular job. Very fun game. I got to be honest, I don't think I've ever won this game, but it is fun. It is great. Really, really, really enjoy Pavlov's House. If you're looking, it's a solitaire game. So if you're looking for a great solitaire war game set in Stalingrad, this one is phenomenal. That is Pavlov's House. That is number 3. That is from DVG Games. My number 2 is another solitaire game. This came out last year or earlier this year. Or well, no, it would have been 2023, yeah. And it was a game that, again, I thought it looked awesome, and I played it, and it was so much better than I thought it was going to be. He's since come out with another game in this series, which I might like a little bit better. But I really love Stalingrad, Advance to the Volga, 1942 from Revolution Games. This is a great game. You've got the map of Stalingrad, and you've got various German units kind of on the periphery. Now, there's different terrain. There's like heavy urban, light urban, clear. I think that's what it is. And as you move your units, you're the German players, you're moving your units to try to consolidate the territory by the river. As you're moving your units in, you've placed these counters, these Russian counters that match the terrain. Now, you don't know what's on them, though. You flip the counter over, and there's going to be like an ambush or an assault or some way the game is going to strike back at you, and you have to deal with it. There's like a events table that tells you exactly what happens there. But then there's a number on it, and you add that number to the terrain number, and you kind of have to try to beat that number. So you take your lead unit, which gets its full strength, and then all your other units get like supporting strength. They get like an additional strength. But then you can buy support units like artillery, engineers, and aircraft, and you can use these things to try to boost your power. You have a die roll, and you have a couple of die rolls for your strength and for the enemy's strength. Whichever one's higher wins that battle. It is really fun, it is really intense, and it's really simple. This is an easy game to learn and an easy game to play. It is fantastic. Again, I had no idea I was going to love this game as much as I do. It is great. So that is number 2, Stalingrad, Advance to the Volga, 1942, and that is from Revolution Games. All right, my number 1 Eastern Front game of all time. This is a war game, but it's not a straightforward war game. It's certainly not a hex counter war game. It's a little lighter, and yet it has got some real depth to it. This is another David Thompson design, and this is my number 1, Undaunted Stalingrad from Osprey Games. Undaunted Stalingrad. Now, I love the Undaunted series. It started with Normandy, North Africa, then they had a reinforcements pack, then they had Stalingrad, then they had Battle of Britain. But Stalingrad, alone among these games, is a campaign game. Now, I am, I think, 10 games in. Kim and I have played, I think, through 10 games, and it's like a 15-game thing. So we gotta finish it because it is great. It is fun. It is. It amazes me how cool each new scenario is, and how much each new scenario brings to the game. I really enjoy it quite a bit. I actually gave a copy of this. I had a friend of mine. I got a good friend of mine, Zach, who his daughter was graduating from high school. Well, he and she played the Undaunted games together. They didn't have Stalingrad. Actually, for her graduation, I gave her a copy of Stalingrad. So she and Zach have been playing it too. And I think they're a little further than us, but they haven't finished it yet. But it's such a good game. It's a deck building game, and when your units come up, you've got machine gunners, riflemen, scouts, etc., etc. You can then manipulate them on the board. And there's different things they can do, and there's choices on every card. Really good. And it's a great campaign game. This may be my favorite campaign game I've ever played. I'd have to think about it, but it's certainly up there. But that is Undaunted Stalingrad. That is my number 1. That is from Osprey Games. Well, ladies and gentlemen, let me know. What do you think? Do you like these games? Do you not like these games? I mean, I expect a lot of people are war gamers that are kind of mad this isn't just a war gamer list, because I get stuff like that from time to time. So please let me know what you think. Be polite, but let me know what you think. I'm always interested to know what people think of my lists and think of the games on the lists. Please, let us know. Leave a comment on YouTube, Board Game Geek, on Facebook, and please subscribe to this channel on YouTube. Please follow us on Facebook and Twitter, etc., etc. And also, too, I'd ask you to check out my other channel. That is Cody Carlson, PhD, where we talk about military history and books on history, fun things like that. I'd ask you to subscribe to that channel. That would mean a lot to me. And please leave a thumb for this video on Board Game Geek. And if you really do like the content we bring here, I'd humbly ask you to click on the Super Thanks button and leave a tip. Did you know that it takes 3 sheep to make 1 sweater? I didn't even know they could knit. Please somebody help me on my feet again. And I don't know where I'm going, and I don't know where I've been. Please somebody help me on the solid ground. It's a long time, and I'll be dying. Once a year I wind up in the band. God knows that I love to fight, but I don't ever win. It's a fine line to damnation, but God let me in.
Sean, I gotta tell you, I really love that Uncle Sam outfit and the way you've really gotten into the spirit of this game.
Thanks, Cody. And I like how you've really gotten into the spirit of the game with your drab, humble communist clothing, your round, Khrushchev-like face, that blank stare that just screams public education, your propensity to always split the bill perfectly even, although we know that you ate more onion rings than the rest of us, and your unwillingness to name names even though you are full aware who egged my car last week, and your complete lack of overall hygiene that will ensure that no one ever loves you. You have really brought the whole feel of communism to the table. Well, anyway, on with the review.
Yeah, let's review the game now.